Raise your hand if you've ever been worried/nervous about wearing your natural hair out in public spaces. All right, I think I got some hands. These are the constant fears of many black women, even men, not because they don't love their kinks and coils, but because of the stigma surrounding natural hair. Now, you might be wondering why this is. Eurocentric beauty standards were placed on men and even women long before time. Our hair wasn't seen as pretty professional, and these westernized beliefs tried to consume that sense of self and that uniqueness and cultural significance of natural hair. Now, before I continue, my name is Catherine, and my TEDx talk is titled A Deep Dive into Natural Hair Discrimination. It isn't just hair. Now, the history of natural hair is loaded, and I'm going to cover the ancestral ties, cultural significance, and how it's been attacked. Now, the value of natural hair in African history is immense. Hair was a symbol of identity, and the absence of style was a cause of concern. In the 15th century, different tribes had different elaborate hairstyles that represented their social hierarchy and their status and stature. And long before 3000 BC, cornrows originated in the west coast of Africa. Moving on to times of slavery. On the Atlantic slave trade, hair traditions were erased because hair products and hair tools were not allowed. Therefore, in the Americas, slaves had to get creative. Some utilized metal farm tools to comb/plait their hair. A creative thing slaves did was to cornrow rice in their hair so that they always had a sense of nourishment, regardless if they weren't given food for the day. And a sneaky rebellion action that they performed was to cornrow maps, or better yet, escape routes, into their hair so that they wouldn't get caught when trying to plan their methods of escape. And a dehumanizing act that was performed by slave traders to slaves was the act of head shaving. This was to instill that inferior concept and tried to take away that sense of self and that cultural significance that was tied in natural hair. Now, but with oppression comes resistance, and it involves afros and the Black liberation movement. Now, afros were a symbol of Black agitation. In the 50s and 60s, the resistance movement really started to kick up, and iconic Black activists like Toni Morrison, Angela Davis, and members of the Black Panther Party sported their afros. It was a symbol of enduring the fight against racism, and they wanted to dispel these norms about what natural hair and Black hair should be. Moving on, we had the 2010s, where the natural hair movement took off. Prior to that, the emphasis of hair was on relaxed hair, chemically altered hair, straight irons, hot combs, and other heat tools and chemicals that just weren't really healthy for our hair. But with this movement, a lot of people started transitioning from relaxed hair to natural hair. But not all people transition to natural hair. Some people still have relaxed hair, but they just have healthier products that actually cater to Black hair to take care of their hair. The whole goal is choice and change, and embracing the creativeness of protective styles like locks, bantu knots, twists. There was an increase in social media tutorials online of people showing other Black people how to do their own hair. And there was also an increase of Black-owned hair care products that actually catered to what our kinks and coils needed. And last but not least, there was an increase in representation in the media. You can see on TV shows where earlier in the years, when young people looked up at themselves, they didn't really see any representation of their natural hair. But now it was more prominent. Now, remember how I talked about hair anxiety? Why is this? Where does this come from? Well, today I'll be touching on natural hair discrimination. And I'm going to focus on 3 zones: the judgment for Black people for wearing their natural hair and protective styles, the restrictions on where and how Black people can wear their protective styles, and last but not least, the cultural appropriation of our hairstyles. But in case you're still feeling unsure about my talk, let's get into some statistics. Did you know that 80% of Black women are more likely to alter their natural textured hair to conform to these ideals? Because they are 2.5 times more likely to be judged in the workplace, looked over in job interviews, or experience hair bias. This reflects the vulnerability that many Black women have when choosing what hairstyle to wear, like me choosing to wear my braids up like this today with the color red in the back. Now, the Good Hair Study from 2017 talks about the explicit and implicit bias. It covers how Black women are seen as less attractive when they wear afros compared to those who wear straight hair. Now, let's define natural hair discrimination. What is that? It's discrimination based on textured hair, which is a form of social injustice, where Afro-textured hair is viewed negatively. It's seen as unattractive, unprofessional, and unclean, and other negatively connotated words. The harm it incurs on Black people is that it's restricting what Black hair is and how we get to express it. And it also is just a form of systemic racism that's preserving these white ideals on what Black hair should be. Now, let's talk about spaces. Think about your school dress code. Did you really like that dress code? You know, maybe you had to wear the polos and the khakis, or you might have had the restrictions on what tops to wear, like no spaghetti straps, which I'm wearing right now. But keep that in mind, keep that feeling in mind, and think about this. Did you know that a student named DeAndre, a high school student, he was given the ultimatum. He either had to cut his locks or he couldn't graduate. Now, let's pause. Cut his locks, locks that were part of his Trinidadian culture and represented his father's heritage, or he couldn't walk the stage even though he met all those requirements. That seems unfair, right? And prejudice policies like this are happening every day, like that of Genesis Jones, who was penalized for her afro being inappropriate, which doesn't really make sense. Now, moving on from school, we can talk about the corporate world, where you have the professional versus unprofessional hair debate, where professional hair is seen as short hair, slick back hair, or long, straight hair. But unprofessional hair is protective hairstyles like this, or afros, and other forms of textured hair. There's so many restrictions on how black people can wear their hair in the corporate world. And we can see that how by black men with short hair are valued more than black men with longer hair or locks because they're seen as unprofessional in these ideas. Now, when we think about this Duke University 2020 study, they talk about how black women are seen as less competent when they wear their afros compared to those with straight hair. Now, how can you just visualize a black woman and see her as less competent just because you saw the hair she has on her head, but you haven't even introduced or talked to her? That's just your immediate hair bias that was made. Now, moving on from the corporate world, we can look into other spaces too, like sports. So, a student named Andrew, again, a lot of issues with students. He was given the ultimatum. Sounds familiar? Cut his locks, or he had to forfeit his wrestling match. Now, locks that he's probably been growing for a long time, and his wrestling match that he probably had to cut or bulk depending on his weight class, he was given that ultimatum on the night that was supposed to be so exciting, where he got to show his skills. Hold on that. Then we move into Olympics. In the past, the Olympics prevented a larger curl cap that would accommodate for natural hair and braids that don't really fit in the curl cap that don't really fit in the cap that was designed for those with straighter hair. Because my hair definitely doesn't fit in a regular standard size swim cap. Then we talk about the US Army. They didn't even, until recently, they didn't even allow sister locks or locks as a professional hairstyle. Due to what reason, we don't know. And then just assumptions made on a black people's identity, like associating afros with militancy and locks with being dirty or unclean, despite not even talking to the person, just again, hair bias. But with all these examples of oppression comes the activism that's starting to increase. We can talk about in 2019 how the Crown Act was introduced. This stands for creating a respectful and open world for natural hair. Now this act, its purpose is to protect against textured hair discrimination and protect against these zones like schools and corporate world from discriminating against people with Afro-textured hair. And it's very important. However, only 23 states have passed that act so far, including Delaware, But besides that, there are so many other states that haven't really jumped on the ball gun just yet. And then when we think about how in the past year, it was tried to move to the federal level, but was denied. In the House, it was passed, but in the Senate, it got rejected unanimously. So how can we think? How do we think about people still not wondering and people still not thinking or doing their own research about how natural hair discrimination affects black people when there are so many instances, so many cases you can find online where people are talking about these experiences and that hair bias that they're feeling when it's very real? Well, let's talk about hair texturism. Hair texturism is a belief that one person's hair texture is better than the other. And this is seen in times of slavery, where in addition to race-based ideas of where and how someone should work, people also discriminated on what their hair texture was. And that overall affected their chances of freedom and their overall health in these environments. And that's where that whole good hair versus bad hair debate stems from. And if you've been listening to my talk, you can kind of tell which one is which. So, reflecting on everything I've said, I've given you the history. I've given you the cultural significance. I've given you the activism. I've given you oppression. And I've told you so much. Natural hair is a prominent social activity. Consider barbershops and hair salons. That community, that's a tradition that's been passed down for years and years and years. That sense of excitement when you walk out of a barbershop or a salon with your hair done and just looking good and feeling so great, that can't be replicated. But yet, people still discriminate on natural hair. Now, as I finish my talk, and when the lights go dim and this video is posted on YouTube, what can you do? What will you think when you think back to this talk and reflect on it? Well, here's one thing we can change today: microaggressions. Little comments. Here's a popular one. Asking a black person, "Is that your real hair?" Or maybe even simultaneously asking that question and reaching to touch that hair, which is offensive to many black people because you're instilling those hair ideas and that hair bias of what black hair should be, when it really depends on the black person how they want to express their Afro-textured hair. But instead of that, I've given you some options. You can compliment black people on their natural hair and protective styles. You can speak out when you see natural hair discrimination or see someone being judged for their natural hair or protective styles, saying it's too loud, it's too big, it's too colorful. And last but not least, you can listen when black people come to you and talk about the hair bias they felt and the natural hair discrimination that they experience. Because natural hair is beautiful. Our hair defies gravity. It's versatile. There's so many things we can do with natural hair. There's so many thousands of protective styles that we can do. Just search YouTube or look at Pinterest for some. But like an onion, natural hair has so many layers to it. And I want to leave you with one thing. Please, just remember, it isn't just hair. Thank you.